Welcome back. So recently we've discussed the topic of what it means to be spiritual. I would hazard a guess that probably everyone on this particular call, Zoom, whatever you want to call it, live stream, considers themselves, if you ask them, that they're a spiritual being. But I always like to ask people when they say that, what they mean by it, and listen to see if they can come up with a coherent answer. And I think it's a good question. So a variety of ways to define it. We've looked at it from a couple of angles. One angle, if you ask people that are spiritual, if you were to query them, what does that mean? They might say, well, inside of us, there's a divine spark or a divine essence. It's a good definition, isn't it? There's something inside of us that is essential, that is primary, that is fundamental, that is non-material, that is, you can use a lot of different words, but it's in there, this divine spark or this divine essence. So we say that to one another. Now, somebody who's not spiritual, they would say, nah, there's no such thing as that. That's a weird superstition that humans came up with a long time ago to assuage their fear of dying and that they would live forever, blah, blah, blah. So it's spiritual beings generally hold to that premise that there's a divine spark, and this divine spark leads to a host of moral and ethical and behavioral ways that we treat one another. The word namaste in yoga means the divine inside of me recognizes the divine inside of you. And when we have a sense of this divine and we act as if, and we make that as real as we can, it determines our ethical and moral behavior toward other people and to ourselves. Once this is realized, we realize we can't really degrade or diminish other people. And if we do, we're really just hurting ourselves. And so it's a profound way of thinking. And yet, those of us who say that we're spiritual and that there's this divine spark, a more profound question is, do we have any sense of it? Do we experience it? Is it just a concept? Is it a sententious platitude that sounds good, but we're so distracted by the worldly material things that while we give lip service to this divine essence, does it really make any difference? Do we really feel it? Do we really know it? If we're divine, have you ever not felt divine? Do you ever wake up feeling sort of disheveled and sore and angry and cranky? And it's like, yeah, I'm a divine being, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, they're divine, but I kind of hate them and let's gossip about them. So there seems to be, even though we're spiritual beings and we say that we get cut off from it. We're cut off from it. There's a yoga word for being cut off from our divine essence. It's called avidya. It's one of the kleshas. Klesha means afflictions. Avidya is the primary root, klesha, affliction that causes all of life suffering. If we can clear up avidya, then everything in our life straightens out and the divine becomes our primary reality. This would be worth knowing, wouldn't it? What's the solution to avidya? Well, the solution to avidya, being cut off from our divine self, literally forgetting it, is to remember it. What is it that causes us to forget experientially our divine essence? Well, we're thrown into this life and we're taught a host of different ways of thinking that are really run counter to the truth of our being, to our divine essence. We're taught to compete. We're taught to compare. We're taught to struggle. We're taught to be anxious. We're taught a whole host of things that may be exactly counter to the nature and truth of our divine essence. Having thought so many thoughts for so long in a particular pattern and our brain getting wired in a particular way, while we might actually be divine, that may be so far from our experience that it may as well just be the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot, given how frequently we see it. What's the way out? What's the way out of avidya in this thought-invoked disconnection or separation from the truth? Well, clarity, remembering who we are. You can't think your way into remembering who you are. Isn't that a fabulous conundrum? Once you've set all these trains in thought of motion of who you think you are, more thought is not going to unwind those endless rabbit holes and coils. This is the great conundrum of being. Once you've thought yourself into who you think you are, there's no way out except to unthink it. It's necessary to unthink it. Meditation. In meditation, we just stop practicing so much thought. We can turn it off. And when thought turns off, or at least slows down, then vidya, clarity, remembrance returns, and the sense of the divine, which has been washed away behind the noisy screen of thinking, is then re-revealed. I'm not sure that's a word, but it is now because I just said it. So in our meditation, we're looking to re-reveal reality. And we can do it. But at the start, the momentum of certain thoughts is so strong, it may feel aggravating or frustrating or hopeless or like an endless, painful pursuit. But sooner or later, we do learn to get quiet, and the screen of who we think we are drops away and reveals who we really are, which is divine. And then we can actually eat the food rather than eating the menu, which is way more delicious and way more nutritive. Did you get anything out of today's talk? I hope so, because you are divine, and we'll always talk more about this because it's an endless fountain. See you guys.